Our best investigators, we've got somebody that's been missing. It's rare somebody just stop existing, off the map. And so we want to make sure that we're allocating all the resources that we possibly have to try to finding her. It takes a lot. Sometimes when people go missing, they're missing because they want to be missing. They just don't want to be found at the time. But even if that's the situation here, there are a lot of people concerned. They're concerned enough that they keep you guys engaged in the process, and so we have to be concerned enough to keep you guys engaged in the process. And so our sole intent is to find Danniella alive. That's what we want. That's the best possible scenario for us and for her family.
Welcome to Unresolved, a podcast all about unsolved crimes and other stories that don't have an ending. I am your host, Micheal Whelan. If you would like to learn more about this show, you could click on any of the links found in the show notes, or head to the podcast website at unresolved.me. There, you could find links to any of our affiliated pages, the podcast store, the Patreon page, etc. And you could also follow along with each episode via a transcript. Once again, that can be found at unresolved.me. To learn more about this show, just listen through to the end of this episode. Now though, without any further ado, here is the story of Danniella Vian. Danniella Nicole Vian was born into a military family in Roswell, New Mexico. Her parents later divorced, splintering their small family, and Danniella would spend her formative years growing up in the state of Kansas. There, not much is known about her personal life, but as a young adult, she began attending Kansas State University, which was where she met a young man named Tyler Thomas. Tyler was a soldier that was stationed at a nearby military base, and soon enough the two had started dating. They would quickly become an item. In December of 2013, the two welcomed a child into this world, a daughter named Cora, who, from birth, would be raised primarily by Tyler's mother, a woman named Julie Dykes Thomas. Danniella and Tyler would remain close with Cora and with Julie, their child's grandmother and primary guardian. But they seemed to be young adults that were struggling to get their own lives together. They were in no fit state to raise a child on their own. Eventually, Tyler left the military, and both Danniella and he moved closer to Tyler's family in Mobile, Alabama. Danniella did not seem to be close with her own family, and seems to have grown pretty estranged from them. Moving to Mobile was a major change for her, and a chance to hit the restart button on life. In 2016, Danniella and Tyler moved into an apartment together near Mobile's Medal of Honor Park. However, at this point, their relationship seems to have splintered somewhat, despite them dating for several years. The year prior, 2015, had seen an unsuccessful attempt by Tyler to file for custody of Cora, in which he accused Danniella of smoking weed around their daughter. This claim never went anywhere, but seemed to draw a line in the sand between the couple. Their romantic relationship seemed doomed, but the two would apparently remain close to one another, not only continuing to live together for a while, but remaining friends. In January of 2018, Danniella discovered that she was pregnant with her second child. Because she was a 24-year-old that was still struggling to get her life on track, she did not plan on keeping this child, who she later found out was a boy. She made plans for the child to be adopted out over the next several months, hoping that the boy's future family would do a better job raising him than she could at the time. Tyler was not believed to have been the father of this child, as the relationship between the two of them had soured by this point. You see, at this point, Tyler had developed a dependency issue, which would continue to play out over the next several months. But he and Danniella remained close as friends. The same month that Danniella had discovered that she was pregnant, January of 2018, she had also started working at P.F. Chang's, a popular Chinese-American restaurant chain where she worked as a server. This job seemed to be Daniella's stepping stone to a better life for herself and Cora, her daughter, with whom she wanted to prove herself to and eventually become a more involved, caring mother for. She was hoping to buy a car of her own, no longer having to rely on other people for transportation, and seemed to be making plans to do so before the summer. In June of 2018, Danniella was dropped off at the hospital by a friend of hers, where she had previously scheduled an appointment to be induced. She soon began delivering her second child, and was met at the hospital by Tyler, who wanted to show his support for Danniella. In the early morning hours of June 6th, 2018, she gave birth to a baby boy, who was eventually handed off to another family. Later in the day, it was reported that Tyler Thomas, Daniella's on-again, off-again ex-boyfriend, was arrested for a probation violation. It was a non-violent crime, likely related to drug use, but which resulted in him being locked up for the foreseeable future. Danniella Vian was a 24-year-old that was just trying to figure out her path in life. She had finally started to get momentum working in her favor, having a solid job, a 2-room apartment of her own, and hopefully a vehicle of her own in the near future. On June 17th, 2018, Danniella wrote a list of goals for herself in her journal. These were not only major milestones she wanted to get past, but personal goals she was hoping to achieve in the coming weeks and months. This page of her journal can be viewed online, but Danniella labeled it, "What is the next step after getting a car?" Under Things I'd Like to Do, Danniella listed, get Cora's bedroom completely together, pay $200 towards a Capital One credit card, start school, pay Regions, likely some kind of debt owed to the aptly named Regions Regional Bank, and finally, pay a library fee. Under personal goals, Danniella listed, take Cora to school every day, make sure Cora is attempting a sport or a dance, and finally, having Cora sleep over 80% of the time. Danniella Vian seemed to be working hard to build a better life for not only herself, but her daughter, Cora, who was now 4 years old. Not only was she looking to build a stronger relationship with Cora, but within weeks of that journal entry, Danniella seemed poised to file for at least partial custody of Cora. Unfortunately, she would never get the chance to. On July 17th, 2018, a Tuesday, Danniella was dropped off at a Pearls Motor Car dealership in Mobile, Alabama. Julie Thomas, the mother of Daniella's ex-boyfriend, Tyler, who was also the guardian of Daniella's daughter, Cora, was like a mother figure to Danniella. Even though the romantic relationship between Tyler and Danniella had soured, these two remained close. On this Tuesday, Julie was the one driving to the car dealership, in what was a very exciting day for Danniella. Speaking to reporters with NBC's Dateline months later, Julie recalled, quote, I pulled up to the dealership. She went inside, got the keys, and got her car. She was all excited. I assumed she was going back to her apartment to get ready for work. Danniella had financed her purchase of a 2014 Chevy Cruze, which was dark blue to the point of almost looking purple. The car had temporary plates on, and when Danniella drove away from the dealership lot, at around 1 p.m., that was the last time that Julie would recall ever seeing her. The next couple of hours are pretty scattered, with some reports indicating that Danniella headed into work briefly, and even stopped by a nearby mall to pick up school supplies for Cora. However, other reports indicate that Danniella went home and slept for a few hours, waking up at around 5 p.m., which, if you know anyone that's ever worked in the service industry, is not an unusual time to wake up. We do know for a fact, though, that Danniella eventually made it to an establishment named Heroes Sports Bar and Grill, where an old friend of Daniella's was working. Randy Capps, one of Daniella's friends, whom she had not seen in a while, was working as the bartender, and Daniela decided to pay him and his group of friends a visit. Reports indicate that Daniela arrived at the bar shortly after 5 p.m. and met with Randy and his group of friends. This group of friends included a man and a woman who Daniela seemed to not really know ahead of time, named Denson White and Mallory Kenworthy, respectively. Like I said, Daniela wasn't exactly friends with these people, but seemed friendly enough to outsiders. They all visited for a bit, with Daniela's friend Randy working behind the bar, and they all stayed to watch the MLB All-Star game. They stuck around at Hero's Bar and Grill for a bit, with Daniela celebrating her milestone of buying her own car. A few hours later though, at around 9 p.m., they all decided to head out to another bar nearby. They were each waiting for Randy to get off of work, and with an hour or so to kill, decided to meet up with him once he finished his shift. In the meantime, this group of old and new friends headed to a bar named the Dublin Irish Pub and Eatery, which was located on Old Shell Road, near the University of South Alabama campus. Once there, they hung out at this bar, nicknamed Dublin's, for a little over an hour, with Daniela texting and calling one of her girlfriends in the hopes of luring her out for a few hours. Unfortunately, her friend was working and was unable to meet her. At the Dublin Irish Pub, Randy eventually texted his group of friends, asking them to meet him at a third location they had previously talked about, Ollie's Mediterranean Grill, a restaurant and hookah bar that was just a few blocks away from Daniela's apartment. The three friends, Daniela, Denson, and Mallory, set out from the bar in their separate vehicles at around 10:45 p.m. This is where things began to grow a little complicated. On the way from the second location, Dublin's, to the third location, Ollie's, Daniela began flashing her lights at the car in front of her, which was driven by a man named Denson White. Both Denson and Daniela pulled over into a Shell gas station near Interstate 65 and Government Boulevard, which was actually closed at this hour. There, Daniela told Denson that she had lost her phone, and might have left it behind at the bar they had just left, Dublin's. Taking this as a cue to go back and look for the phone, Denson seemed to get back into his car and began heading back to Dublin's. He assumed that Daniela would be following him back, and when he last saw her, she was getting back into her car, presumably to follow him. However, by the time he made it back to the Irish-themed pub, Denson discovered that Daniela was no longer driving behind him. According to reports, Denson was able to find Daniela's phone at the Dublin Pub and Eatery, and claimed to have waited around for her to arrive for approximately 20 minutes. It has been reported that Denson then continued on to the third bar, Ollie's, where he met up with the rest of their friends. However, other reports indicate that he then went home after dropping off the rental car he had been driving, about an hour later, at around 1 o'clock in the morning. Randy Capps, Daniela's bartender friend, had texted Daniela and told her that he was off work and headed out to Ollie's Mediterranean Grill, but claimed to have received no response from Daniela. He met up with his group of friends at Ollie's a little before 11 that night, and never saw Daniela again. The following morning, Wednesday, July 18th, the grandmother and guardian of Daniela's daughter, Julie Thomas, received a phone call at around 7:30. On the other end of the phone was Denson White, Daniela's friend from the night prior, who was looking to get Daniela's phone back to her. He told Julie that he had found it in a parking lot and was looking to get it back to Daniela. Julie told Denson to drop the phone off at Daniela's workplace, P.F. Chang's, where she was later expected to be at work. Denson agreed, and Julie wrote off this phone call as a coincidence. She claims that it was not unusual for Daniela to lose or misplace her phone, so it wasn't a big deal at the time. However, over the next couple of days, Julie would have a hard time getting a hold of Daniela. She tried reaching her to let her know about her cell phone, eventually having Daniela's landlord put a note on the door to her apartment. Hours later, though, the note remained untouched, and it did not appear like Daniela was at home. Julie expected Daniela to surface the next day, Thursday, July 19th, because Daniela had plans to visit with her daughter, 4-year-old Cora. Daniela had many struggles in her life, but the one thing she did not mess around with was time with her daughter. Once several hours passed without Daniela showing up, Julie began to suspect that something was terribly wrong. On Friday morning, July 20th, nearly 3 days after Daniela had last been seen, Julie received another phone call from Denson White. He claimed that he still had Daniela's cell phone and had not dropped it off at her workplace. He had continued trying to get it back to Daniela herself, and was hoping to hand it off to Julie and be done with it. Julie told Denson that she was actually going to report Daniela missing that morning, and any information he had to offer would be appreciated. She had learned that Daniela had not shown up to work for several days, and she was now asking Denson to meet her at the police station to help fill in any time gaps that she was unaware of. Thankfully, he did. arriving at the police station ahead of Julie and speaking to investigators for a few hours, telling police what had transpired on Tuesday night and when he had last seen Daniela. Julie also spoke to police, providing a statement about her attempts to contact Daniela in the days prior. That day, Friday, July 20th, 2018, Danniella Vian was officially reported as a missing person. The investigation to find missing 24-year-old Danniella Vian was headed by the Mobile Police Department, who, at its inception, had 6 detectives working on the case. Almost immediately, it seems like this investigation had run out of runway, as police were unable to recover Daniela's belongings from the night she disappeared. Other than her cell phone, they were unable to recover either her car, the 2014 Chevy Cruze she had purchased on the day she went missing, nor any of the items that she had with her. After stopping at the Shell gas station on Tuesday night, she seemed to have fallen off the face of the planet, and investigators would find it nearly impossible to determine where the night had taken her. There had been a GPS tracking device on Daniela's vehicle, which had been installed by the dealer, who maintained similar devices on all vehicles that were financed, just in case the buyer decided to stop making payments. However, this GPS device had seemingly been shut off at or around the Shell gas station on the evening of July 17th. This indicated that, whatever had happened, it was likely a premeditated act. The loved ones of Daniela have indicated that the GPS was intentionally disabled, having been turned off at the gas station and never turned on again. However, I do think it is possible that it was a device that only ever pinged when the car was started, which would mean that the last time the engine turned over was at the gas station. If so, that would mean the engine never reignited after that, perhaps having been disabled before then at a separate location, wherever that might have been. Reports have been pretty scattered about the extent of this GPS device, but it has been widely reported that information about this device came directly from the dealership where Daniela bought the vehicle. According to this claim, all we know is that the vehicle last pinged at the Shell gas station where Daniela had pulled over to look for her lost cell phone, and where she was last seen. Police were able to obtain surveillance footage from this gas station, which again was a Shell gas station near Government Boulevard. This footage apparently shows 2 vehicles, likely Daniela's Chevy Cruze and Denson White's rental car, pulling in at around 11:05 p.m. on the night that Daniela disappeared. The footage then shows Denson's rental car leaving just a minute or two later, at around 11:07 p.m., which seems to validate what he had told police about going back to retrieve Daniela's cell phone at the bar they had left minutes beforehand. However, it definitely appears like Daniela did not leave with Denson. She decided to stick around in the Shell gas station parking lot, likely looking for her phone inside her vehicle, just moments after Denson's vehicle left, at around 11:08 p.m. Security footage shows a third vehicle entering the parking lot. It is unknown if this was Denson returning or an unknown third individual, but this vehicle would stick around for several minutes. They would not leave for more than 15 minutes, leaving at the same time as Daniela's vehicle. At around 11:24 p.m., both Daniela's vehicle and this unknown third vehicle left the gas station parking lot, splitting up and heading in different directions. This unknown individual's vehicle headed in the direction that Daniela had arrived from, back towards the bar they had just left, and Daniela's car headed off in the opposite direction, towards a larger population center. By the time her car left the gas station, the GPS device had already been turned off. It is unknown if Daniela was behind the wheel, with police only ever stating that she was last seen, quote-unquote, occupying her vehicle at the gas station. Roughly 1 week after Daniela was reported missing, on July 26th, 2018, this surveillance footage was released to the public by a local news station, but almost immediately was taken down at the request of the Mobile Police Department. This was presumably done to maintain the integrity of the investigation, but police never disclosed why they did not want the footage to be made public, so we can only assume. It is possible that the security footage was so poor that police did not want to tip their hand to the culprit just how vague their evidence was. Based on one still frame from this video, which is all that's still publicly available from this footage, I consider this unfortunately likely. This image seems incredibly dark and shadowy, and it's hard to really make out any figures from it. If the rest of the footage is similarly shot, then it might not show much, and reveal why police have been so skeptical about their findings from this video. It is unknown if police were able to pull security footage from other establishments in the area, such as a Waffle House that's across the street from the gas station, or any of the other businesses that were just down the block. The location of this gas station is kind of wedged in between a commercial and residential area, so I can only assume that other companies along Government Boulevard had security footage facing the street, which might provide more information about the cars seen driving in and out of the gas station parking lot that night. Denson White, one of the last known people to see Danniella Vian on the night she disappeared, has been an obvious target for speculation in the months since this story began unfolding. Denson was hanging out with Daniela on the night in question, and pulled into a gas station parking lot just minutes after leaving a bar with a group of friends. The two were seemingly alone in the parking lot for a minute or two, before Denson pulled out and returned to the Dublin pub they had just left. He then returned to the bar and found Daniela's cell phone, and his path from there seems a bit scattered. Some reports indicate that he met up with the rest of their friends at Aldi's Mediterranean Grill, a restaurant and hookah bar they had all planned to meet at, while other reports indicate that he dropped off his rental car and returned home at around 1 a.m. It's possible that he did both, but other than a statement made to police, which has not been released, Denson has not spoken publicly about the night in question, and has remained pretty secretive about his friendship with Daniela. The following morning, Denson still had possession of Daniela's cell phone, and, through it, received a call from Daniela's on-again off-again boyfriend, Tyler Thomas. Denson told Tyler that he had found the cell phone in a parking lot, and Tyler gave Denson the phone number for his mother, Julie Thomas, who was the grandmother and guardian of Daniela's daughter, Cora. This then led to Denson calling Julie, and the follow-up conversation that ultimately led to Daniela being reported missing. Denson seems to have been pretty open with police about his encounters with Daniela, and handed over Daniela's cell phone to her loved ones. As far as I, or really anyone, know, he's done nothing but tell the truth and made numerous attempts to return Daniela's property to her. It doesn't seem like he has a sketchy history of any kind, so please don't take my inclusion of him in this story as anything other than a coincidence. Police have stated that they've looked into all of Daniela's family and friends, and with Denson being perhaps the last known person to speak to Daniela before she went missing, he has likely endured a fair share of skepticism by investigators. But, as of this moment, he has not been charged or even publicly suspected of any wrongdoing. On July 25th, 2018, it was announced that the investigation to find out what had happened to Danniella Vian, a missing persons investigation, was being handed off to homicide detectives. The stated cause was that police were hoping to lighten the workload for Mobile's missing persons investigators, and they claimed that there had been no information suggesting that Daniela had been killed. This move, which wasn't necessarily unusual, is definitely intriguing, especially considering that the next day, July 26th, 2018, Mobile Police Chief Lawrence Batiste insisted that there was no evidence of foul play in Daniela's disappearance. Nonetheless, the way that this case began to take shape suggested that something terrible had happened to Daniela, especially since her disappearance was so sudden. She had gone from having a successful, momentous day to just being gone. No contact had been made with any of her friends or family, and she had made no attempt to get in touch with her daughter, Cora, which everyone insists would have been her main priority had she still been alive and or able. More than 2 weeks after Daniela's disappearance, on August 2nd, 2018, the Mobile Police Department published information about Daniela, not only in a press announcement, but in a detail-scarce blog online, which allowed members of the public to submit any information or tips they may have in the case. The information forwarded by Mobile PD stated that Daniela had last been seen on the 3500 block of Government Boulevard, at a Shell gas station just off of Interstate 65, in her blue 2014 Chevy Cruze, which still had temporary Pearl Motors license plates. At the time of her disappearance, she had been wearing a black and yellow Mellow Mushroom t-shirt, where Daniela had once worked. She was also reportedly wearing a pink baseball cap, black leggings, which could have been dark jeans, black Converse sneakers, and a blue or gray colored button-up shirt, which was tied around her waist. At a press conference held later that day, Police Chief Lawrence Batiste made a plea to the public to submit any information that they may have about Daniela's disappearance. He also announced a $2,000 reward for information, which would be more than doubled to a $5,000 reward a short time later.
I asked you guys here this morning because, as you guys know, for the last 2 weeks we have been really allocating a lot of resources to try to find missing persons Danniella Vian. Today we want to make a plea to the community and offer a $2,000 reward for anybody that can provide any information in relationship to her disappearance. We have spent a lot of times doing things of an investigative nature to try to make sure that we get her name, her vehicle description, a picture of her out to the community. We have entered her information into all of the national databases that we possibly can at this point. And again, we're just taking another step to try to get the community to get engaged, and if anyone knows anything about her or her whereabouts and her disappearance, if they would please contact us. It's important. Daniela, when she went missing, she leaves behind right now a infant child, and so we would certainly like to reconnect her with her infant child. Her mother and her in-laws are very concerned about her, and her friends are very concerned about her. And again, as a community, we need to be concerned about her. So if anyone knows anything at all about her, there is a $2,000 reward that the department is offering up for anybody that can provide any real assistance that will help us put an end to her being missing at this point. I'll entertain any questions that you might have at this point. Yes, ma'am.
You say an infant child? Can you expand on that, please?
4 months. 4 months.
4 years.
4 year. Okay.
So a lot of people go missing daily, all the time. Why $2,000 for this case? I know this case has also been moved over to the homicide unit, so it's very suggestive.
Well, it's not really suggestive if you think about it from the perspective of our best investigators. We've got somebody that's been missing. It's rare somebody just stop existing, off the map. And so we want to make sure that we're allocating all the resources that we possibly have to try to finding her. It takes a lot. Sometimes when people go missing, they're missing because they want to be missing. They just don't want to be found at the time. But even if that's the situation here, there are a lot of people concerned. They're concerned enough that they keep you guys engaged in the process, and so we have to be concerned enough to keep you guys engaged in the process. And so our sole intent is to find Daniela alive. That's what we want. That's the best possible scenario for us and for her family.
With communication with the family, have they talked about her going through something recently that would make her maybe want to leave? Or is this simply just something she was, like you said, at a gas station, at a bar, and then just disappeared somehow? Are they wondering about that? Or
that's one of the things that has the family so concerned is, again, historically she doesn't have a pattern of just disappearing or walking out and not notifying anybody. That's one of the very first things that we look at when we start conducting these type of investigations about somebody being missing. Historically, do they have a pattern of walking away and being gone for a number of days and people following reports? Danielle doesn't have a history of doing that, and so that's why we're so engaged, and that's why we're spending so much time and resources to try to address this type of behavior. We've asked for places that she would frequent, and we hadn't been able to find any, based off the information that we've been given, we haven't been able to find anything to lead us to her at this point.
We saw an optimistic note written by Daniela 1 month before she went away. It was talking about how once she got that car, she wanted to
be there for her daughter more and all this stuff. Have you uncovered anything since then that leads you to question her state of mind?
Not at this point, no, ma'am.
Have you guys gotten any leads?
Again, that's why we're here making a plea today. I mean, we've exhausted everything that we have at this point, and so what we're doing is making a plea. If anybody has anything that they haven't already provided us, that's why we're here.
Anything new on the location of her vehicle that she had just purchased that day?
No, ma'am, nothing new.
What about surveillance video? I know we had some surveillance video that kind of sort of showed something like Shell gas station. Any other gas stations?
You know, one thing about it, we're continuing to check, potential areas that she would have traveled based off the vehicle description that we are. Everything that we can do, much like you guys do when you do investigative reporting. We're knocking on doors still. We're still going in the area where she was last seen and trying to see if there are people that might have video that could assist us in any kind of a way. So, that's what we do when we do investigations. When one lead ends, then we start trying to find another one, and that's the reason we're here today, is to try to create some more possibilities for us to continue to follow down.
Talk to me about the timetable. We're at, 16 days since she's gone missing? Is that alarming to you, or is this normal for a missing person?
Again, we've had cases where someone's been gone missing and they were gone for a year, and they resurfaced, they were alive. And we've had cases where someone was gone a short period of time and the outcome was much different. And so again, we're going to remain optimistic. We want to find Danniella alive, and again, if Daniela is listening, we want her to understand that there are so many people that are concerned about her and her health and her safety. Whatever it is she's going through, I'm pretty sure that we can find a way to help her through the process of whatever it is that she may be going through.
How are her friends, family members, and coworkers? I think she was a server at P.F. Chang's. How is everybody cooperating with this?
Our investigators have had very good cooperation from a lot of people, and they've had not so good cooperation from people, and that's typical in any investigation. The level of cooperation from person to person changes, and so our investigators have done some really good work talking to the people that they have talked to. And again, we always run into obstacles when you talk to people, but some people just don't like talking to the police about issues.
So you're offering a $2,000 reward today. Do you suspect foul play in her disappearance?
At this point, I have nothing that would suggest I need to think about foul play, but we do want to find her, and so whatever it takes for us to try to help make that happen, we're going to do those things, and I apologize for that. But we're doing everything that we can as a department to try to get information out there and to try to get people to help us find her.
And this reward, is this being offered by the police department or her family?
By the police department.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's part of our Crime Stoppers initiative, what we typically do. Yes, sir.
When she was in that convenience store, did she use a debit or a credit card? And if so, have any traces been put on that?
And again, as part of the investigation, we wouldn't release that information at this time.
Do you think she disappeared at her own will?
Again, if that has happened before, but again, we just want her or whomever that may be associated with her disappearance, if they hear this, see this, or if someone knows something that we haven't already investigated, to come forward with it. And again, I wouldn't want to say that she's gone of her own free will, because I don't know that at this point.
I don't know how many details we can get into, but any cell phone activity on her cell phone? I know she may have lost it that night.
And again, there are some things about the investigation that we just won't share, because it's an investigation, and we really need to make sure that whatever happens, we maintain the integrity of our investigation.
In the wake of Daniella's disappearance, her loved ones banded together to organize a candlelight vigil, which was held at Medal of Honor Park, near where her apartment had been. This first vigil was held on July 27th, 2018, exactly 1 week after she had been reported missing. and a second vigil would follow in October of 2018, roughly 3 months later. In the interim period of time, these loved ones had helped keep Daniela's story alive in the press, namely by sharing her story on social media, and by making and handing out flyers with Daniela's information around locations in Mobile, as well as creating t-shirts with her face and name on them. Tyler Thomas, Daniela's longtime boyfriend, was in police custody at the time of Daniela's disappearance, roughly 1 week after she went missing. Towards the end of July, he was let out of jail and checked into rehab. According to his mother, Julie, who remained the guardian of his and Daniela's daughter, he felt guilty about not being able to protect the mother of his child. Speaking to reporters from NBC's Dateline, Julie later stated, quote, "He has guilt of not being there with her to protect her when she went missing, so of course he is very mad. He's dealing with every emotion. He is worried that Cora is not going to have a mom. He is going to have to be the mom and the dad." As for Cora, Daniela's daughter, who was just 4 years old at the time of her disappearance, she seemed to know pretty early on that something was wrong. Speaking to the same Dateline reporters, Julie said about Cora, quote, "In the beginning, she just knew that mommy was missing. But now, 3 months later, she has overheard more. As careful as you are, she's going to hear. Cora asked me if her mommy had passed on. I don't even know how she learned that language. I told her I don't know if she has passed on. I just wish I knew how to handle this with Cora." Later that year, in December, Cora celebrated her 5th birthday, which was the first she had celebrated without her mother. In September of 2018, roughly 2 months after Daniela's disappearance, a man that lived in Theodore, Alabama, was arrested. This arrest had followed a police search on a property along Wigfield Road in Theodore, about 15 miles southwest of Mobile. The search, which had been preempted by a dramatic raid on the property, was believed to have some kind of connection to Danniella Vian's disappearance. Canine units, police recruits, and other officials were out there to conduct a search warrant, which took place over a large stretch of rural land. Police did not seem to find any evidence pertaining to their search, packing things up later that afternoon. But 3 people were held in custody following the search, including 36-year-old Jason Corey Dykes, who was the cousin of Daniella's ex-boyfriend, Tyler Thomas. He was also the nephew of Julie Dykes Thomas, who was the guardian of Daniella's daughter, Cora. Following this search, Jason Dykes was charged with unlawful imprisonment, domestic violence assault, and domestic violence strangulation, all of which were crimes that had been alleged by Dykes' longtime girlfriend. She had told police that Dykes had been incredibly abusive, and had even imprisoned her in a room on numerous occasions, with a lock on the outside of the door. Police would not state how this search and arrest pertained to the missing persons investigation of Danniella Vian, only that the two were loosely connected in some obscure way. It has since been alleged that the victim, the ex-girlfriend of Jason Corey Dykes, told police about threatening comments Dykes had made about Daniela in the past. This then made them take her own complaints much more seriously, and eventually led to the search of the property and the arrest of Dykes. Some have pointed to the personal connection between Jason Dykes and Danniella Vian, as Daniela had long dated Dykes' cousin, Tyler Thomas. In addition, Dykes is alleged to have been close with Cora, Daniella's daughter, who has been raised by Dykes' aunt, Julie Thomas. Daniela and Jason were even Facebook friends, and it is widely believed that she had been to the searched property on at least one occasion for a family gathering of sorts. Jason Dykes later pleaded not guilty to the charges leveled against him, and police have since refused to speak publicly about what involvement, if any, they believe him to have in Daniella's disappearance. He is presumed innocent of any charges, and only time will tell what led police to search this property he lived on in their quest to find Danniella Vian. Months later, the search for Danniella Vian continued. Daniela, who would have turned 25 years old, had not been seen or heard from since pulling into the Shell gas station on July 17, 2018. Surveillance footage seemed to show her vehicle driving away from the location roughly 20 minutes later, but it was unknown if Daniela had been the person behind the wheel. Police remained hesitant to label her disappearance the result of foul play, which seemed to indicate that she might have run away or left of her own accord. To her loved ones, this just wasn't a possibility. Police would soon state that her disappearance did not seem to be voluntary, and that seemed to conflict with their earlier statements about there being no evidence of foul play. In the press, it was reported that Daniela had never used a debit or a credit card, having paid for everything with cash. After her disappearance, cash had been discovered in her apartment, indicating that she had not run away. After all, if she was going to run away in her brand new car, why would she have left behind money before doing so? Other loved ones of Daniela pointed to her long list of goals as an indication that she had not, and would not, run away. She had just purchased a car, which was the first major milestone towards bigger and better things, and, in so many words, was a sign to her friends and family that she had finally gotten her shit together. It made no sense for her to have run away, at least, not anymore. Another theory that loved ones had to try and publicly reject was the notion that Daniela had been involved in some kind of drug activity, which some believed may have played a part in her disappearance. This theory seemed to be tied into the legal issues faced by Tyler, her ex-boyfriend, who had gotten out of jail after Daniela's disappearance and checked into rehab. Many seemed to project his issues onto Daniela, and looked at her having possibly smoked weed in the past, as well as using cash to pay for things, which is a legal tender, as some kind of indication to her living some kind of illicit lifestyle. There seems to be no evidence whatsoever that Daniela was involved in any kind of drug activity, and this seems to have just been baseless speculation from people online. The search for Danniella Vian would continue for several months, with each discovery of a submerged vehicle in a nearby body of water, or unidentified female remains, leading to hopes that answers would be close at hand. However, it wasn't until May of 2019, potentially just days or weeks ago, depending on when you listen to this, that some answers were finally found in this ongoing investigation. In April of 2019, an off-duty police sergeant was out on a boat on the Bayou Sara, a long sprawling river that extends out of the Mobile River towards the towns of Saraland and Satsuma. The location he was at, roughly 15 miles away from the Shell gas station Danniella Vian had last been seen at, was located just off of a boat landing in a residential area, which is a public park visited by many in the area for some quiet boating, fishing, or swimming. The sergeant was looking to map areas around the Bayou Sara for future dive training, which was being coordinated as a project between the Mobile and Saraland PDs. As he explored the area, he picked up a figure on his GPS, which looked similar to a submerged vehicle. He had made a similar find in the past, which was later determined to have been a stolen car, so he suspected this would be the same thing. He marked the location on his GPS for later exploration, and planned to bring the dive team out to look at it later. A week or so later, officials with the Mobile Police Department were conducting a training exercise in the Bayou Sara, along with officials from the Saraland Police Department. In particular, they were checking out locations previously marked by the sergeant, which included the odd object underwater that he wanted to check out. On May 2nd, 2019, these dive teams discovered a blue Chevy Cruze, which, upon checking the license plates, appeared to have been recently bought or stolen. The vehicle still had its temporary license plates on, showing that it had once belonged to a local car dealership named Pearl Motors. Soon, it was theorized that this might be one of the area's high-profile missing vehicles, which police had been searching for close to a year. Later in the day, it was confirmed that the vehicle had indeed belonged to Danniella Vian, and it was the Chevy Cruze she had purchased on the day she went missing, July 17th, 2018. Dive teams continued to examine the vehicle, with sources later telling news outlets that it seemed like the vehicle had been submerged for some time. According to insurance adjusters, who were familiar with water damage to vehicles, it seemed like the car had been submerged for around a year. However, that wasn't the most surprising revelation of this discovery. Inside the vehicle were what appeared to be human remains, which were believed to be that of an adult woman. Likely Daniela herself. Mobile Police Chief Lawrence Batiste met with reporters and spoke about what this discovery meant for Daniela and her still unsolved disappearance, which was now being investigated as a homicide.
So
Good morning. First of all, just kind of want to make sure I brief everybody. Yesterday evening, the Mobile Police Department and the Saraland Police Department dive team were doing training in this area, and they came across a vehicle that we believe to be the vehicle that was driven by Danniella Vian back in July. As you know, she went missing. This morning, we're here on what will be a recovery effort. Because of the unique situation that we're dealing with a vehicle that's in the water. We have to treat it as if though it is a crime scene. This is basically a recovery operation, and because of that, again, the uniqueness of the situation that we're dealing with this morning requires us to be extremely cautious and methodical about what we do. We have to make sure that we map the vehicle in the water as it's underwater, and making sure that once we make a decision to move that vehicle, because of the length of time that Danniella has been missing, we have to take into account the potential level of decomposition that may have taken place. And so we have to make sure that as we move that vehicle, we don't lose any evidence whatsoever that may be critical to us at some point in a criminal investigation. So this is going to be a long, methodical process for us today. We'll try to update you guys as we get to certain stages of the investigation and the different things that we're doing to try to make sure that at some point, if we have to deal with this as a criminal matter, we're able to provide the family the best level of closure as we possibly can from a law enforcement perspective. You know, our goal as a department is always to try to bring a family closure. So we wanted to make a recovery of Danniella, but we didn't want to make a recovery of Danniella in this manner. You know, best case scenario for us was to bring Danniella home alive to her family. Again, we have not 100% confirmed that that's Danniella in the vehicle, but you know, we are at this point somewhat speculating that it is her in there. It is her vehicle, but we cannot say with 100% certainty at this point in time that happens to be Danniella in the vehicle. So there's a lot we still have to do.
Tow trucks soon arrived at the scene and began what was a lengthy process to pull the vehicle out of the water. Police did not want to destroy whatever crime scene might have been left behind inside of the vehicle, so the vehicle was not pulled out of the water until Friday, May 3rd. The day after it was discovered by dive teams. The car was finally pulled from the river at around 2 p.m. that day, and the remains found inside were taken away to a forensic lab for further testing. Again, Mobile Police Chief Lawrence Batiste was at the scene to speak with reporters, talking about the discovery and what it meant for the Danniella Vian investigation, which was now being officially labeled a homicide until further notice.
I want to come and provide you guys an update from our last update earlier this morning around 9 o'clock. We have finally been able to recover the vehicle from the bayou. The vehicle appears to be the vehicle that Danniella Vian went missing in, a blue Chevy Cruze with a Pearl Motors tag. There is a body inside the vehicle. I cannot confirm to you at this time whether or not that happens to be Danniella Vian. But at this time, we're treating the scene as a homicide scene because we won't get an opportunity to go back and redo the scene. So our goal is to make sure that we collect all the visible and forensic evidence that we possibly can while we're here, so that if for some reason we have to go to court and prosecute, we will be able to do that, and we would not have missed anything that we potentially could have got from working this scene. As I shared with you earlier today, this is a particularly unusual scene because the vehicle was recovered, was found in the water, and so trying to work a crime scene in the water can be extremely difficult. I think that the Mobile Police Department, the Saraland Police Department, and the other agencies that assisted us in this recovery effort did an outstanding job of working together and making sure that we were at least able to recover the vehicle intact. And so our goal at this point is to begin to process the contents of the vehicle so that we can hopefully make a positive identification of the person that we have found in the vehicle, And when we get to a point where we can provide some definitive answers as it relates to who the person inside the vehicle, we will provide that information. And again, because of the level of decomposition that exists at this point, there may be several days or weeks before we know, because we may have to use some forensic DNA type things to make positive identification. So if you guys will be patient with us, what you'll probably hear from us most of the time is that the clothing or something may be consistent or those type things, but any definitive answers as to who we found in the vehicle, we will not be able to answer those questions until we've had an opportunity to get the forensic results back.
Does it seem like the car and the remains have been down there for a long time?
Again, when something sits in the bottom of water over a period of time, it doesn't take a lot of time to see deterioration. And simply based off this area itself, the basin itself, it looks like it's been there a while, but again, there's no way for me to tell how long that vehicle has actually been.
Do you have a suspect or person of interest? Any clarity on that?
Again, we're treating it as a homicide, but we don't even know until we've had an autopsy done on what we get. We won't know if the forensic examiners will actually determine it to be a homicide.
Was the body in the driver's seat?
Because I was not in the ward, I can't tell you where the exact position of the body. But again, it's over a period of time, the body may have moved because of it being in the ward. And of course, if you know anything about forensics, that when something's in the ward, it eventually will begin to rise to the top. And so we probably won't even be able to tell exactly where the body was positioned at the time it was originally put in.
At the moment, it is not believed that Daniela's death is being considered an accident. For her to arrive at this boat landing, she would have needed to take a route that would have taken her completely out of her way, and it was likely not an area that she was familiar with. It also would have required her to have purposefully disabled her vehicle's GPS tracking device at her last known location, before careening off into a body of water in a residential area roughly 15 miles away, creating a series of events that is wildly improbable, at the very least. The discovery of Danniella Vian's vehicle earlier this month has helped provide her loved ones with an idea of what happened to her, and helped quiet some of the more conflicting stories and theories, but has done very little to provide any actual closure. Julie Thomas, the guardian of Daniella's daughter Cora, spoke to local news station WKRG and talked about what this discovery meant for her and other loved ones. Quote, "It's just a numbing realization that she's really gone. As much as I knew, it was numbing. And that's what we've been working for so long and striving for and begging for and praying for. When you finally get that, it's not closure." Police have announced that they are transitioning Daniella's case from a missing persons investigation to a homicide investigation, although some think that this is a way for police to simply cover all of their bases. If they later determine Daniella's death to be due to an accident of some sort, they can easily change it. However, moving in the opposite direction, from accident to homicide, is much tougher, and would make any future trial an uphill battle. Many details about this case remain unknown, including the identity of the remains found in Daniella's submerged vehicle. As of this episode's recording, police have yet to confirm the remains as Daniella's through DNA testing, even though it is believed by most that the remains are indeed Daniella's. A candlelight vigil is being planned for Friday, May 10th, at the Bayou Sara boat landing where Daniella's vehicle was found. By the time you're listening to this vigil has undoubtedly already come and gone, but I hope that it helps provide those in attendance with some kind of closure after all of these months. While several questions remain unanswered, such as what happened, who was involved, etc., it seems like this most basic question of what happened to Daniela has finally been answered. If you have any information about this case, you are encouraged to contact either the Mobile Police Department at 251-208-1700 or Crime Stoppers of Southwest Alabama at 251-208-7000. At the latter, you can remain anonymous, and should your tip help lead to an arrest, you may be eligible for a $5,000 reward, which still stands today. Because this case is ongoing, I anticipate there being many more details to be released in the near future. Should that happen, I promise to keep you all informed of any developments. But as of this moment, the story of Danniella Vian remains unresolved. Thank you for listening to Unresolved. If you would like to learn more about myself or the show, make sure to follow along with Unresolved on social media. We have pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you could find any of those by searching for Unresolved Pod on your app of choice. If you would like to send in an email, you could do so by addressing it to micheal@unresolved.me. That's Micheal @unresolved.me. And you could shoot in a voicemail or text to 831-200-3550. If you want to find out any other information, view transcripts of each episode, check out my sources or musical artist used, or anything else, just head to the podcast website at unresolved.me. Once again, that's unresolved.me. There, you could also find links to the podcast store and Patreon page. I just recently updated the podcast store to include some cool designs, including a retro-looking Unsolved Mysteries logo, which can be printed on t-shirts, long-sleeve baseball shirts, hoodies, stickers, mugs, etc. Pretty much anything you could think of. It's pretty cool if I don't say so myself. You can also support the show by heading to patreon.com/unresolvedpod and helping out with monthly donations. In return, you get access to all kinds of perks, such as commercial-free episodes, early access, bonus mini-episodes, access to my monthly series Resolved, and you could even become a producer of this show. At this moment, I'd like to thank the producers who help support Unresolved through Patreon. These producers are Ben Krokum, Quil Carter, Laura Hannan, Astrid Kneier, Katherine Vatalaro, Damion Moore, Amy Hampton Miller, Timothy Stratton, Scott Meesey, Stephen Wilson, Sara Willemsen, and Scott Patzold. Apologies if I butchered any of your names, but thank you all again, so much. Even if you're just listening to the podcast, it really does mean the world to me. Anything you do beyond that just blows me away. Thank you all for continuing to listen and support Unresolved. That about does it for me today. I may or may not be taking a week off before the next episode. Gotta take care of some catch-up stuff. But I will be back with another Unresolved story before long. Until then, everyone, stay safe, and I will talk to you later. Take care.